Welcome to episode number 9 of the National Land Realty Podcast, where we discuss all things land. Our goal here is to inform, educate, and entertain those of you who own land or are interested in the buying and selling of land throughout the United States. My name is Mac Christian, and I am the Chief Marketing Officer here at National Land Realty. I'll be your host for this episode. Now, today is a bit of a treat. I have as a guest Jason Burbage, president of National Land Realty. Jason is one of the founders of the company, and we discuss how the company started, the things that set National Land Realty apart, the land industry as a whole, and what is coming down the road in our market. This is a chance to gain insight from one of the best minds in the business and one of the more inspirational leaders that you will come across. This interview did run a little long, so we've broken this apart into 2 parts for your listening convenience. Now, sit back and enjoy the show. All right, so I'm sitting down today here with Jason Burbage, and for those of you who haven't done this, this is a chance to interview your boss day for me. So I work with Jason Burbage here at National Land Realty. He works as acting president, and he is my boss here. So I'm going to try to see if I can get fired on the air. What I want to do is have a really candid conversation, sort of how National Land Realty got started, and really more of an overhead of philosophies of the company, and sort of an outtake of where the land industry is, what the land industry is doing, and what the land industry is all about. And Jason is really one of the key people in the country to speak to that. So Jason, I wanted to ask you, how did you get started in this industry? How did you get pulled into the land industry in the first place?
You know, I got into it because this is going back to when I was a senior in high school and trying to decide what I wanted to do with my life. How many of us have been there? For those of you who might be in that place right now, you're thinking about your future. And the only thing that I was thinking about is what I didn't want to do. And I didn't want to be in a career where I found myself stuck behind a desk. So I didn't want to be a banker, and I didn't want to be a lawyer, and I didn't have any kind of propensity to go into the medical field or anything like that. The one thing that I did want to do is something that involved the outdoors, because I grew up in a rural community and spent a lot of time in the outdoors. Family owned land. My grandfather farmed, both from an agricultural standpoint, and then on a cattle side of things. And my stepfather was in land management. He was in a large plantation manager for his whole career. So, and then my father is a conservationist, and he was in the newspaper business, but he spent a lot of time writing about the outdoors and how it's important to ensure that we're protecting what God's given us, and not wasting it or exploiting it. So all those various influences just had me in a place where I was like, well, I want to do something where I'm not stuck behind a desk, and I can get out and appreciate where I'm at my happiest, and that's outside. So actually, I went to Clemson University and started off as a forestry major because that was the only thing that seemed like that could be of interest. And my stepbrother's a forester, and got up there and realized that after a semester, that really wasn't the road I want to go down. And Clemson offers a degree and a agriculture economics degree, and I didn't even know that existed until I got up there. So I switched majors to that, and at that point in time too, I'd been thinking about real estate because my grandfather, who I mentioned before, who was a farmer and a cattle rancher, and spent a lot of time in the hunting industry as well, eventually found his way into real estate, and it kind of planted a seed of interest for me on that. So I got it into my head that I wanted to be the next great Southern plantation estates broker. There were a few of them out there at the time, growing up in South Carolina. And I had interned with one of them and just decided that was going to be the perfect career for me. So that was where I got started. After graduating from Clemson, the guy who I'd interned with told me he'd hire me, but he couldn't train me because he didn't have the bandwidth for it. There's no company like National Land Realty back then. It was either, little boutique specialty firms where there's a few people who, focused on niche type of stuff like selling, hunting estates, timberland tracts, that sort of thing, farms, or it was just general real estate brokerages. So I started off with a residential company to get trained and got stuck in that for about 9 years, and made a great living at it, but was not happy at all in the residential space. I was doing some land deals but that's how I got started in real estate, and it evolved into what we've got with National Land Realty now.
And that story reflects a lot of what I hear all around our company and our industry is almost everyone you talk to wants something to do with the outdoors on some level, agriculture or just having a touch on that industry. And for myself too, I had to pivot my whole career for probably around 5 years just to get into that industry, because I started out in tech, and it took me a number of years before I realized, I just don't care all that much about making people shop on their cell phone, in a remote area, or I don't care all that much about getting them to like purchase this new wafer or something, something along those lines. And I tried to get into the land, and I found myself at National Land, and finally it have something to do with the outdoors. And it's much the level of fulfillment that people get from being able to have their hands on that industry is really, it's a line that you see a lot with people in our industry. So how did you get started with National Land specifically?
So that's a story about relationships. I mean, relationships is a huge thing in our business. And I had a relationship with somebody who I met in college, Jason Walter, who's our CEO. And when he had the vision for starting his own business, he'll tell you right now that he didn't envision what we've got now. He envisioned it going down a completely different road. The Great Recession changed that, but he convinced me to leave. I was living down in Charleston at the time, to leave Charleston, to move up to Greenville and go to work with him. And it took a lot of convincing on his part, because I was in a great situation. I was working with my stepmother, was around all my family, and I don't know, but there was this itch there. Like I said, I wasn't enjoying residential real estate. So I didn't want, I looked at what my stepmother was doing, and she was incredibly successful in real estate, but she's not even in it anymore. She's following, figuring out what her purpose is and going down that road of helping people from a health and wellness standpoint. I didn't want to be in my, 50s going through the grind that she was going through as a residential real estate agent. And so when Jason approached me about coming up to work with him, after a lot of thought and prayer, and, I said, I'm single and don't have kids. I mean, this is the best opportunity for me to go out and try this. So that's how I got started working with Jason. And it was the best decision I've ever made when it comes to from a business perspective.
And so Jason Walter's a Clemson guy too, right? You guys,
yes.
So that it keeps on surprising me, and I don't think that I just never realized that Clemson was that involved with agriculture, because we have, we're working with Dr. Grant Woods of Growing Deer TV, and he got his PhD at Clemson for forest resources. I didn't realize they were that focused on natural resources and land.
Yeah, I mean, if you're not from South Carolina, you probably don't recognize that. But Clemson's a land grant institution. It was created to provide education for agriculture back in when it was founded, and that is a core component of the university. It's grown into an incredible university now that does way more than just agriculture. But yeah, it's a little known fact for sure.
Yeah, yeah. So, and you spoke to this a bit just now about the the difference in mindset between residential real estate and what you do now, and what our company does with land real estate. What's sort of your overhead view? Like, what's the primary differences of, say, what that industry is like, what it's like for an agent versus what, land brokers do? And we say land brokers and we say residential agents, but they all have the same licensing initially, like they're real estate agents. And then they can get off and go off and do accreditations to get, more licensing specific towards land, but they all kind of start from the same place. And it's easy to confuse, like, hey, I got a real estate agent, I'm selling my ranch. But there's a huge difference. And you, I think, more than most people can illustrate that difference.
Yeah, it's a good question to ask, because you're right. In real estate, we all have the same real estate license. As far as the state of South Carolina or whatever state that you're licensed in, or multiple states that you're licensed in, you can sell anything you want to. I mean, there's nothing preventing me from going and selling a commercial building or selling a house or whatever it may be. And so the difference with the land brokerage industry versus the residential industry or the commercial industry is that we felt like there was a need for a company that focused on selling land. And what I mean by that is we don't just sell vacant land. We sell a lot of rural property. And that can be, somebody who wants some space around them. They've got a house and 5 acres, up to thousands of acres of timberland or agribusiness, or, recreational tracts for hunting, fishing, and that sort of thing, as well as commercial development land. So that's on the residential development side of things, or industrial development, or whatever it may be. So it's all about dirt. I mean, we have for years have jokingly said, there's nothing special about us. We just sell dirt. But dirt's pretty valuable. And we found we've learned that there's a specialty in doing what we do, that it's not much different than, someone who spent their career selling, specializing in what we do is not going to be the best person to go in and sell a house in a residential neighborhood. Could they do it? Yes. Would it be the best? No. And so we operate in that way, where we're going to take on what we're best at. And we want to hook people up with, if it's in an area of real estate that we're not best at, we want to introduce them to people who are, and vice versa. So the difference between us and other real estate companies in general is what we specialize in. And then from that standpoint, we've built a business that where we've really tried to distinguish ourselves, and a lot of the things that makes us unique, as opposed to other companies that are land brokerage companies, because there are other great companies out there that do what we do in our space, from selling ranches, selling farms, selling timberland, selling hunting tracts, selling development land, and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I get asked about it a lot, and I'm always saying things like, one, the pacing is a lot different from what I see. Is the residential agent life is just a nonstop, like it's a speed game. It's where can you get and how fast can you get there and who can you talk to faster. Where with land, some land sales take 4 years.
Yeah,
you put a ranch on the market, it'll take 4 years, and it's a whole different ball game to talk about a granite countertop to what's the soil pH on your land, and how did you establish this row crop, and where should you put your hunting stand. It's totally different skill sets that you see.
Or how do I get a road in here? That's a big one.
because access roads. Yes, exactly. So you've gone into national land, from residential, informed this thing sort of from the ground up, with Jason Walter. What's different about the company? What you said that there are competing companies in our industry, and everybody kind of has their niche. Everybody, we all work towards the same things, but we do it in different ways. What's the different way that National Land Realty does things?
Yeah, you always get asked that question. What makes you different?
Everybody has a differentiator.
Right. And I've over my life, I've taken a little bit different approach than that, because you can say what makes this different, and I can rattle off, well, we do this, 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 and this, and it's in some ways it's kind of the same canned stuff that anybody would say from that perspective. And I think it's because of my personal background, because I'm viewed, from a physical standpoint as being very different, and that's another conversation that we can dive into at another time, but. I tend to focus on, instead of always thinking about what makes us different, because I don't know I don't work for other companies. I don't know what they do day in and day out, from outside of what the public sees. So since I don't have any control over that, I've lived my life in a manner in which I focus on, and think about who we are and where we want to go. And so, what makes us who we are is our core values. And, you and I were talking about this the other day. Everybody says our culture and our core values, and it's good. But that's something that's really important to us. And so our core values are finding opportunity and diversity, loving what we do, treating people right, being coachable, and having a mindset of trying to get a little bit better every day. And by living those day in and day out, it allows us to get to a place where we're creating opportunities for folks. And, we approach this from two ways. As far as our field team, our sales team, our agents and brokers go, that's creating opportunity for our clients, our landowners, our buyers, that sort of thing. Our mission is that we exist to make things grow. So we want to help people grow. And whether that's, a portfolio of land, bank accounts, figuring out unique ways to be able to maximize returns for folks' investments and that kind of stuff. And then on the internal side of things, from the corporate operations of this company, our focus is on our clients, who are our brokers and agents, and creating opportunities for them. And it's a lot of fun to create opportunities. And then there's the challenge in people taking advantage of those opportunities, of course. But by doing that, we provide solutions, and it's fun to be a solutions provider. We've learned to have a mindset to really be successful in life in general. We've got to embrace the unknown, embrace the uncomfortable, because that's what life is all about. So this mindset and this identity that we've developed allows us to be an asset to the people who we serve, whether it's a landowner or buyer, or it's one of our field team members or our staff, our support crew. And so by doing that, it's allowed us to get into a space where we can stand out. We focus on, it's always been important to me to ensure that people are able to do what they're best at. And so if we can create opportunity that allows our field team to spend more time doing what they're best at, then that obviously allows them to be more productive, ideally, allows them to enjoy their job more because they're doing what they're best at and what they love. And it allows us to be able to have vision for things and create things like, Land Tour 360, or the team operation that we work with within a real estate company. And the fun aspect of seeing people invest in each other, within the organization. So all that is what makes us who we are.
Yeah. And, not to be, I'm a little embedded in this, like more than a typical host, like just running an interview because I'm part of the company. So it's, obviously there's going to be some cheerleading along as we go along through it, but the concept of finding opportunity in adversity is repeated on our team often. And it happens where somebody brings something to me on the team and I'll just repeat that. And it's funny because it stops them. Something happens and it's, obviously anytime something happens in a company and you bring a problem to a manager or a boss, it's an issue. And so I'll usually just repeat that line back of, we find opportunity in adversity, and it always stops whoever's bringing the problem to go, oh, where's the silver lining? Where can I look at this? And it always makes people look at it a little differently. And everybody has a culture statement. Everybody has a mindset statement. Everybody has a mission statement. Everybody does those things, but it has to do with repetition and practice, where every company has them. Half the employees out there can't even repeat their company's mission statement because it doesn't matter that much. But if it gets repeated, it tends to take hold. And I feel like that's done in our organization. And yeah, I agree. Tell me a little bit about Land Tour 360. And I spend myself fairly embedded in it, but from your perspective, it's a technology that I don't think nobody else has in our industry. And a lot of times technology can sort of just be a shiny thing that someone just uses and it's a promo, right? But Land Tour is not really a promo. It's a tool, both in the sense of remote viewing, and it's a tool in the sense of, even gas prices nowadays. That presents immense value. I was wondering if you could take me through sort of even maybe the development of that.
Yeah. So the backstory on this is a big part of the evolution of this company. So as I mentioned before, when Jason and I started working together, I didn't say we started working together in 2007. So everybody knows their history. In 2008 was towards the end of 2008 was the beginning of the Great Recession. And in the beginning, we were not really focused on rural land brokerage. It was more about development land. We worked with a lot of developers and a couple different businesses that we had. And so when the recession hit, all that business went away, and we shifted to the brokerage side of things more so. And as we started growing and making a name for ourselves there, I also talked about relationships. Well, Jason met one of our other partners, Aaron Graham, at a conference, and the two of them just hit it off. It was meant to be, the way those two met and how they ended up aligning with each other. And they're two very different people, and I'm different from them all too, and we all work well together. But that was a pivotal point for our company when we decided to partner with Aaron and his company. Aaron's based out of Nebraska and had been in the brokerage business for some time after a professional career, football career in the NFL. And so Aaron brought to the table a way of thinking that Jason and I don't possess. And it was a great compliment. So we had been always focused on the work, the grind, and the data, information, how we use that information to create business. And Aaron came at it from a different perspective, from a technology perspective, and also from a marketing perspective. And so when we got together and we started brainstorming about different things and thinking about different things, he kept talking about virtual tours. And this was really a vision that he had, Land Tour 360. And as with anything, he didn't invent the concept. He saw something else and goes, wow, how can we make that work for us? And that's what he did. He got into it. Ann Gaffigan, who was our tech department at the time, and Tyler Van Meteren spent just a the three of them spent a ton of time building this thing out. And the vision behind what Land Tour is it's a way to virtually tour land. And when this was
so it's the same concept as the 3D tours you see on the houses.
Yeah.
You walk through, you see the room, you can spin around, spin the camera, look at different things. But this is from an aerial perspective, huge acreage. You can tour, thousands of acres from, Alaska and look at something in Missouri.
Or 5 acres and get
5 acres,
in the same way. So from a time perspective, because I'll never forget this. I lost I was selling during this was 2016, and I lost out on a listing opportunity on a larger property, 1,000, 2,000. I can't remember the exact acreage of it now. And the agent who won the listing sold the seller on this aerial video that he was going to make, that he did make, that was great. And that was like, and I can remember calling Aaron up and going, I just lost this listing because this guy had the forethought to hire this drone guy to come in and make this awesome video about this property. And I was like, we got to do that. And he's like, I got it. I got something way better in mind for this. You just got to have a little patience. And so at the time, and aerial videos are still very useful. But where they're limited is you can see what the drone is flying over. But that's it. And you can hear the narration or whatever the type is this popping up on the screen is showing you. But the vision for Land Tour and what it is now, it was something more immersive. The idea is, how can you tour a property, whether it's 5 acres or 5,000 acres, and get as much knowledge about this property as possible, so that when you show up on site, you're already have an expectation of what you're looking for, and you're basically just making sure the boxes are checking in real life. And so what we learned after we launched this thing is that it had so many extra benefits that we didn't really think about in the beginning, because the idea was make this easy for people to be able to see property and want to come and see the property. And traditionally, when you show a tract of land, and this is what makes us different from residential, in that in residential, if you're selling real estate in residential, if you're looking for real estate residential, you're in a pretty confined area as far as where you're looking. And so you may see 20, 30 properties before you buy something, but it's all within a few miles of each other. And in land, our guys, on average are covering a 2-hour radius from where they're based out of. Some people way more than that. And so it's an investment to go out and for a buyer to go out and look at a tract of land. And if you're making, multiple trips before you decide on what you're going to buy, because again, it's a major investment, there's a lot that's going into that. And so what we realized is, after we got these things after we started getting Land Tour out there and associating with listings, is that the amount of showings were cut. The second, third showings were dropping, because people were showing up educated and going, I don't need to come back and see this multiple times. This is what I want. And so it was a huge benefit to the buyer. Obviously, it's a benefit to the seller. And then it was a big help for our agents, our land professionals, because, they're able to focus more on getting the deal done for the people that are involved. So it's been phenomenal in how this thing has evolved, and we've got a lot of cool stuff coming along with it. And there'll be other folks that come up with things similar to what we do, and that's great too. It helps us to continue striving to get better at it as well. And it's just a fascinating thing how this thing has evolved.
Yeah. So, and obviously that's been a part of the growth, but what has sort of like helped the company grow? Because to somebody outside of the company, we've gone from what you guys started out in a garage. Where did you?
Well, we weren't in a garage. We actually had an office space. It was a tiny office space that that Jason literally slept in when it was in the very early days. But we started off in a small office in Greenville, South Carolina, and now we're in 40 plus states and pushing close to 400 agents and brokers around the country, and 20 plus people on our staff. And it's still crazy looking back on where we started and weathering the Great Recession, and the recession made us who we are. I mean, that was the silver lining. It was hard to see in those early days. But yeah, how did we grow? Number one, I mentioned this before, but really having clarity on our core values, on our mission. It's having clarity on our purpose. And it's something that I talk about a lot with everybody who will listen to me, is just having clarity on your identity and who you are and who you serve and what you do from a life perspective, and how does work fit into that as well. So we had clarity on that. Focusing on putting people in positions where we're maximizing what they do best. Relationships was a huge part of it. Accountability was a tremendous part of it. Accountability is not a word that people like to talk about because it's uncomfortable in many ways, but that was a big aspect to it. Focusing on what we have control over and not spending a lot of time worrying about things that we can't control, and just sheer will. And that aspect of it is that we went from being small, where all of us, Jason, myself, the other salespeople that we had, the whole purpose was to get out and build relationships with every landowner in the areas that we were working. And by doing that and making a name for ourselves and doing things the right way, and having a very proactive mindset, meaning that, especially during the recession, we couldn't do things traditionally. It wasn't get a listing, sit back, wait for somebody to sell it. It was, how can we create opportunity? It's the same thing. The same thing is still part of this company. How do we create opportunity? And when we started figuring out ways to do that, people started noticing us. And we were able to build relationships with large national landowners that opened the door for us to go into other states. I mean, when we started this company, it was called Carolina Land Realty. There was no vision to be National Land Realty. It was like, hey, let's do this. Let's focus on North and South Carolina. We should be able to make a good living, have fun, and that sort of thing. But I already shared the story about how Aaron got involved, and that was dynamite. I mean, when that happened, I mean, things kind of exploded from there, and then it's been the rest is and this is really the idea behind this company is, how can we create opportunities for people where, from a sales perspective with our field team, they're not getting bogged down having to do things that take away from their ability to be able to put deals together. And that's something where we're still striving to get better at. But it's been that whole concept, from that perspective, that I think has made us attractive to people. It's why we've had people join us who have, and that's what's fun about it.
All right, so we're stopping the podcast here and breaking this apart into two parts. This concludes part 1 of episode 9 of the National Land Realty podcast, discussing the history of National Land Realty. Tune into our next episode as we discuss the land industry as a whole and the future of companies like ours in the land industry. You can learn more about land ownership and the buying and selling of land at nationalland.com. Hey there, listener. I noticed that you're still hanging out, probably listening to the music. But what I wanted to do was remind you to check out our Land Tour 360s at nationalland.com. These land tours are innovative, interesting, and nobody else in the industry does this. Check out our site, look for any listing that has Land Tour 360 featured on it. You can tour our listings in 3 dimensions, zoom in, get a ground's eye view, watch videos from the ground, zoom back out, look at things from the sky view, then zoom back in on properties that have 3D views of the houses that are on the properties. This is called a Matterport viewing. It's a 3D viewing system for housing. Check out Land Tour 360. It should blow you away. And carry on with your day. Have a good one, and see you on the next episode.